Well, folks, today we are going to be looking at what could be a very probable matchup between the current Vice President JD Vance and AOC, a congresswoman from New York right now. Now, we know it is very, very probable that we could see a 2028 matchup between these two, and that is why it's so important that we analyze and take a look at what the implications could mean for the 2028 election. JD Vance, by all measures right now, is leading the Republican primary when it comes to polling. Right now, on the average poll, JD Vance leads his nearest competitor by 25 points. Now, you have to consider, in these polls, they're also polling for Donald Trump Jr., which I'm sure you all heard his colorful response when he was asked if he would run for president. We're not going to put it on here, but very colorfully said that he is not going to be running in 2028. You have people like Vivek Ramaswamy, which I don't see him jumping in the race. He has made it very clear he is trying to build a statewide profile in Ohio. He's running for the governor's race. So a number of people in here. So I think you could really see a close race between Vice President JD Vance, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Ted Cruz. I think you could see a number of different candidates jump in this race, but by and far, JD Vance is leading the pack 3.5 years out, receiving roughly in the aggregate about 44% of the poll. Now, you flip over to the other side, and you look at AOC. AOC right now is pulling right around 12%, so running about, what would you say, 14 points behind Kamala Harris in the typical polling. And we really have to take a look at this polling and analyze it. And what does this polling actually mean? You may look at this and say, Harris is up 10 points on average in the poll. That is not a good place to be. Look back to 2012, 2013. Who was leading the Democrat primary? You had Hillary Clinton leading in primary polling by 50 or 60 percentage points. This is not a clear frontrunner. Kamala Harris, as far as name recognition goes, is at the highest she has probably ever been right now, or within the last 6 months. And we can see these polls were taken over the last six-ish months. She is at the highest name recognition she will possibly be at. And she is still only receiving 1 out of every 4 Democrat primary voters vote. That is not a good place to be as the, quote, incumbent in this race. This is a horrible place to be. Because just to stay where she's at, she's going to have to spend so much money on advertising to stay relevant in front of people. Meanwhile, AOC is really making herself relevant, going across the country on these Fighting the Oligarchy tours, regardless of how you feel about it. I disagree with him. I think it's total baloney. But at the end of the day, you have to give AOC some brownie points there. She's going across the country. She's a New York congresswoman going across the country, really rallying the Bernie Sanders, the populist, the Democrat socialist wing of the party together. That is what she is doing, and she's doing it very effectively. And you can clearly see that since the election, post-election, January, February, she was polling somewhere around 6, 5, 3, 7%. The 3 most recent polling has her polling all in the double digits. All in the double digits. Data for Progress, she's within 6 points of Harris. Look at the next Data for Progress. Without Kamala Harris in it, AOC is only behind Buttigieg by 3 percentage points. So it is very safe to say this is a bad place for Kamala Harris to be and a very good place for AOC. And then we have to look at the fact that AOC is going across the country, raising tons of money. In Q1 of 2025, she raised almost $10 million. Now, for reference, this was more money than, this was roughly 2/3 of the amount of money she raised in her entire 2024 re-election campaign. We jump over and we take a look at her re-election campaign in New York. You can see here that in 2024, she raised roughly throughout the whole year. Oh, and this is as of June 5th. She raised about $15 million. This isn't including the general election. This basically goes up to the primary at that point. But AOC, she raised roughly $15 million. $15 million in her entire campaign in 24. Now she's going across the country raising tons of dollars, tons of money. This is her, she more than doubles her second highest quarter she's ever had. And you have to give her credit here. You have to give her credit. She has jumped on this anti-establishment portion of the Democrat Party that is very frustrated with establishment Democrats in the party. They are very mad at them. But you may ask why. Why do we analyze the 2028 election? There's a number of reasons we analyze it. We need to really consider who is going to lead the GOP forward. Donald Trump has been in the spotlight for over a decade. He's been on the national platform for almost a decade at this point. We need to know who is going to lead Republican victories for the next decade. That's what we need to know. It is so important. Donald Trump has been such a pivotal player in Republican politics for almost a decade that you have to consider who is most well positioned, who can be well funded, who is well liked, who has the best policy prescriptions mixed with the best electability in the country. That's what you really have to look at. And who can drive out voters. Are we going to try and go for those Trump low propensity voters, or are we going to try and be more of a moderate party? I don't see ourselves moving towards a moderate party. Maybe we appeal to moderates through different policy prescriptions, but at the end of the day, the Republican Party needs to lean into this low propensity voters. And we need to know, how is the Republican Party going to turn out voters in 2028 when Trump is not on the ballot? How are they going to do it in 2026 when Trump's not going to be on the ballot? Because the reality is that Donald Trump will not be on the ballot in 2028. I don't care what anybody says. Look, I voted for Trump in 2024. Honestly, I voted for him in 24. And I'm trying to give you a reasonable, fact-based, straightforward analysis looking at this. Towards the end, we'll probably get a little more partisan because the people who have already listened for, 7 minutes into this video most likely already agree with a lot of my positions. And hey, if you don't agree with my policies and you've watched my content before and you've made it this far into my video, thank you. Like, honestly, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to someone you disagree with. Like, it's hard. There's a lot of people on the left side of the aisle that do not know and just physically cannot listen to people who do not agree with them. So kudos to you for making it this far. Drop down below. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know any critiques you have of me. I would love to hear it. And as always, drop down below, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. If you want to know how you can help our channel grow, how can you help us reach more and more people, hit that subscribe button. It does miracles for our channel, and we appreciate you if you're already a subscriber. Thank you so much for being here with us. Now, continuing on why this matchup really matters, it is a populist conservatism versus Democrat socialism. You see two starkly different ideologies that have taken hold in the party. And we have seen these ideologies battle out, not only in political spheres, but in the judiciary system. We've seen it played out in the federal government. These, Democrat socialist policy prescriptions for the world versus the populist conservatism policy prescriptions for the world. And they're very different. They're very, very different. And when these two ideologies go up against each other, I think the winner is going to be who can brand the other as the establishment. Who can brand the other party, the other person, the other candidate, the other campaign as a campaign or candidate for the elites, who's for the establishment. We know in 2024, Donald Trump was the anti-establishment candidate. In 2016, Donald Trump was the anti-establishment candidate. That he won on that message. And then you're also looking at a huge generational shift. You would see both parties finally jump into the next generation. You would have younger and more outspoken politicians that we can look towards for our policy prescriptions for the future. People who are going to lead us forward, people who can legislate, people who are going to work across the aisle to get things done. It would be a huge, huge shift in 2028 if you had Vance and AOC. We talked about it a lot in 2024 when it was Biden versus Trump. A lot of people thought it would be the winner of the 2024 election would be whoever cried uncle first, whoever jumped to the next generation first, whoever kicked out their de facto nominee, their incumbent first. People thought if the Republican Party kicked Trump out, said no, and went with someone younger, that they would win. And the same thing was said with the Democrats and Biden. If the Democrats would have allowed a primary and kicked Biden out, they thought that he would have had a serious or the Democrats would have a serious possibility to win the presidency in 2024, even though there were very unpopular policies associated with the Democrat Party in the previous 4 years. But ultimately, neither flinched until Biden flinched 107 days out when he was pushed out of the party. He was pushed out of the race, and obviously they did it way too close to the election, and they did not get the results they were looking for, and most people assumed. Because it really was the first party to flinch would win that. And that's how it's going to be in 2028. The first party to flinch, the first party to go to the next generation of leadership, that's who's going to win. That is who's going to win going forward. Even though they're completely different visions for the future, a polarizing landscape with 180-degree differences between their prescriptions for the future. At the end of the day, whoever flinches goes to the next generation will win. Now, JD Vance, we're going to take a look at him real quick. JD Vance, of course, we know, born and raised in Middletown, Ohio, was raised in a working class family, the Rust Belt environment, and his family faced a lot of economic struggles, social struggles. His parents, he didn't have a father in the picture. He was raised by, I believe, by his maternal grandparents. His mom was a drug addict, really a humble upbringing, a very, he struggled. And then JD Vance went on to serve in the U.S. Marine Corps for 4 years from 2003 to 2007, and then eventually got a law degree at Yale. And of course, we know he authored a book called Hillbilly Elegy in 2016, which really outlined the Appalachian culture and the economic decline in these more Rust Belt areas. These Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, these areas where there was huge manufacturing bases that were gutted out during the 90s with NAFTA, with normalizing relations with China, and not even just normalizing relations with China, absolutely tilting the playing field in China's favor. That it wasn't just that we opened up relations to China, it was that we tilted things so in favor of China that it gutted the middle class. Obviously, we know he ran in 2022. He beat out Tim Ryan, who was a representative from Ohio, very popular Democrat in the state, but still, JD Vance was able to win that election in 2022 by roughly, let's just take a look here, 6 points. Yeah, he beat out Tim Ryan by about 6 points. Or granted, this was a state that voted for Trump by what? 11 in 24? 8? You go and look at the governor, you look at Mike DeWine. Mike DeWine won here by freaking 25 points. It's like, this is a Republican stronghold here. But still, Tim Ryan put up a pretty competitive race, no doubt about it, very competitive race in Ohio, and Vance still was able to beat him by 6 points. Obviously, he was then chose to be the vice president of the United States. He was Donald Trump's vice presidential pick, beating out people like Marco Rubio and Doug Burgum, who ended up getting positions in the administration at the end of the day, and really has rose to prominence as a critical Trump ally who has embraced the MAGA platform and is a very articulate supporter of the Trump agenda, someone who can articulate the Trump agenda almost better than Donald Trump can in certain aspects. JD Vance promotes policy prescriptions like economic nationalism. He has a lot of support for tariffs and manufacturing revival. He has a much more conservative social outlook on the world. He opposes abortion, supports traditional family values. Very social conservative. And advocates for very strict borders, tight border control, and also reducing legal immigration, which there's some reports that differ. Maybe it all depends. When you're vice president, you kind of have to take a backseat to what the president wants. But yeah, I don't think JD Vance is stupid enough to say that we need no immigration or we need to significantly reduce immigration. We need to increase immigration as much as we can, but while keeping the standards maybe stricter, which may mean that there's going to be a reduction in the number of legal immigrants that come into the country, because we are going to have stricter processes, a stricter criteria to come into the United States. We should not just be an open border country. We shouldn't. And on a foreign policy front, he is a very skeptical of interventionism, prioritizes U.S. interests, and you could definitely say that he is a protectionist. He believes in protectionism, or I should say isolationism. Definitely a believer when it comes to foreign policy in isolationism. Now, when you look at someone like AOC, we know initially elected to Congress back in 2018, beat out a longtime Democrat, Joe Crowley. And we're just going to find her because here we go. She beat out Joe Crowley, who ended up running in the general election and still got about 6% of the vote. But AOC was the nominee in 2018. She beat out Joseph Crowley, who was a leader of the New York, or the New Democrat Coalition. He had represented the district since 2013 and had previously represented the 7th District since 1999. He'd been reelected to a 10th term in 2016 with 83% of the vote. And Joe Crowley was seen as a potential successor to Nancy Pelosi, as a House leader or a speaker and when he sought reelection in 2018. And we know that the bartender, backed by people like Bernie Sanders, pushed her. We all saw the video, how surprised she was that she even won here. But she was born in the Bronx, raised in a really working class family in the Bronx, went to Boston University. I believe she got a degree in economics, maybe international relations. Let's just say it this way. And I said I'd get more partisan as the video went on. Hopefully I've been able to give you some facts, and hopefully you can decipher between some partisan comments I make versus actually trying to deliver the facts to you, but also, of course, with my spin on it, because at the end of the day, I'm a pundit. This is a political commentary show. So you have to expect my opinion to jump in here. But ultimately, she should ask for a refund from Boston University, because that degree in economics has done her no favors. She is probably one of the least versed congressmen in Congress, period. Out of all the people in Congress, she's probably the least versed when it comes to having an actual in-depth understanding of different economic theories and economic processes that occur within the economy. One of the least versed, least intelligent people in Congress. And now we know she worked as a bartender and as a local organizer before entering politics in 2018. And she eventually became a member when she was elected in 2018 after defeating Joe Crowley, won in the general election, became one of the progressive leaders in Congress. And she joined a group of 3 other congresswomen, Anaya Presley, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib, and they were known as the Squad. The Squad. She has promoted key policy positions like the Green New Deal, aggressive climate action at whatever the cost is. She has advocated for 10, 20, 30 trillion dollars in climate action over the next decade, putting trillions of dollars into renewable energy, regardless of what the cost is to the American consumer, no matter what the debt burden is. She doesn't care. She is pushing for the most radical climate agenda in history. One of the most. She also supports horrible policy prescriptions like Medicare for All, a wealth tax, and student debt cancellation. We can go one by one. Medicare for All, okay, here's the thing. The one area where Medicare for All, or like a single payer system, where it works is emergency care. I break my arm, I need to go to the hospital, I need to get it taken care of. Medicare, a single payer system, typically does well when it comes to emergency services like that. But when it comes to a nuanced, complex diagnosis that you get, you have some form of rare cancer. You have even basic cancers like prostate cancer, breast cancer. It could take 6 months to a year for you to get all of the doctor's appointments that you need to go through in order to eventually get surgery. Then you're going to have to wait another 6 months to get surgery. There are serious wait times, rationing of care in systems like this where there is no incentive for, there is no incentive, there's no competition. They're lethargic. They spend millions, if not billions and trillions of dollars for Medicare for All, and then you have to wait 9 months for a knee replacement. Why do you think people who have some of the most complex cancers come to the United States? You know where they go? They go to Rochester, Minnesota, where the Mayo Clinic is. That's where they go. They don't go to Canada. They don't go to the UK. They come to the United States of America because we have the best healthcare system in America. It's not perfect, by no doubt. It is not perfect. There's a lot of logistical issues when it comes to our healthcare system and how we pay for it. The insurance portion of it, I could spend 3 or 4 hours discussing that. But at the end of the day, these horrible policy prescriptions, then of course canceling student debt, it's stimulus to the economy. It's inflationary spending. Because the debt does not get canceled. It is transferred from the individual borrower. It is grouped together and then put on to onto the federal debt. That is all that happens. The United States then has to issue new bonds, new T-bills in order to fund canceling that amount of student debt. Why should someone get their student debt canceled? Why? Just across the board, why? Please, someone let me know down below. I would love to know why across the board. I can see it if you go into an industry and they have some sort of program, you work 10 years with this job will pay off your student debt at the end of it. Okay, great. Maybe if you want to talk about using tax policy or using student grants for student loans or to go to college for certain types of degrees, you should not be able to go and apply for a grant from the federal government. Let's say you have one person who's getting a degree in gender studies, and then you have or environmental studies, and then you have someone who's going to be a doctor or a nurse. The same grants that are available to both of those people should not exist. There should be grants tailored towards the types of jobs that we need to see in our economy. We should not, as a federal government, should not be subsidizing environmental studies, gender studies, lesbian dance theory. Maybe we shouldn't be subsidizing at all to begin with, but if someone wants to make the argument that you are going to subsidize it, because there's a strong argument to be made that the government should just get out of that. They should get out of lending or processing loans for students who want to go to college. We've seen the cost of schooling increase at the same time when the federal government has got in the student loan business. I think there's a fair case to be made, but also, if someone's going to make the case that we should have some subsidies, it should be very tailored toward nurses, engineers, pilots, doctors, computer engineers. That is who it should be tailored to, not your lesbian dance theory, not someone who doesn't know what they want to do with their life and they decide they're just going to go for gender studies. Absolutely not. And of course, we know AOC advocates for a equity lens when it comes to the criminal justice system. She thinks things should be equitable, that people should have the same outcomes at the end of the day, regardless of what they did. They should have the same outcomes. That's where you see people like Mary Moriarty, who is refusing to prosecute a government employee who worked for the state of Minnesota, the Human Health Services, who keyed Teslas and caused $21,000 in property damage. The far left soft on crime district attorney refuses to prosecute him. And it's a joke. She wants to see things through this lens where, if let's say a white person and a black person commit the same crime. Well, we should be more lenient to the black person because we should be more understanding of the background and the cultural differences. No. The rule of law should have nothing to do with that. You commit the crime, you go to jail. I agree. Prison reform could be a thing where we focus more on rehabilitation, but at the end of the day, there has to be a limit. If a black man kills someone and a white man kills someone, the punishment should be relatively the same if the facts from each case are relatively the same. We should not be looking at it through this social justice lens where we are letting violent criminals get off solely based on their race. At the end of the day, what AOC's policies, these far left soft on crime policies do, is they promote individuals, to just do whatever they want. Why is it that black men in America commit crimes at almost at 10 times the rate of a white man in America? There was a study that was recently done. I believe it is out of 100,000 people. So for every 100,000 white men in America, they commit 2 homicides are committed by white males. For every 100,000 black men in America, the crime statistics are almost 20 homicides per 100,000 black men. Why is that? So when you put this social justice lens on criminal justice in the judiciary system, you basically are letting the majority of the criminals off the hook. That's what you're doing. And then when it comes to foreign policy with AOC, she is very critical of militarism, and I guess her other big one when it comes to foreign policy is supporting Palestine, supporting Hamas, being very critical of Israel. Now, AOC, she has some strengths. I think she has a lot of weaknesses, a lot of political liabilities. A lot of political liabilities, I would say, going into 2028. I think she has a lot less. I think she has a lot of political assets in the primary, but when it comes to a general election, I think it's a totally different story. We know that AOC, she pulls the youth. She mobilizes youth voters. She dominates with Gen Z and millennials via social media. And her progressive energy really inspires a base with bold policies. They're not looking for milquetoast candidates. They're looking for bold candidates who are going to lead Democrats into the future. And that's with stuff like the Green New Deal. No matter how atrocious I think it is, there's a lot of people who like that. They think it's bold and that's what they like. We know AOC does well with Hispanic, Black, and urban voters. It'd be interesting to see. Even an AOC-Donald Trump matchup, that'd be very interesting to see. With the Republican Party pulling a lot more Hispanic support over the last 25 years, how would someone like AOC, or even someone with Hispanic background, I don't know, was Kamala Camel Toe, did she have a Hispanic background? We really don't know, because she was Indian, then she was Black. We don't need to get into it, but how that would all play out. But at the end of the day, she's a very charismatic person, and she's a great communicator. Even though the stuff she is communicating is total garbage brain rot, she's a great communicator. You see her, she may not have great policy prescriptions, but she knows how to put on viral debates, viral videos on social media with a relatable backstory. You can't deny that at the end of the day. She has, even though she's an empty suit, she's an empty suit that still knows how to make noises that energize a big portion of the Democrat base. But ultimately, her weaknesses come down to her socialist policies. They come down to these extremely socialist policies that she supports. The GOP will attack this. This is a huge liability. This will scare off moderate Democrats, independents, and swing voters. And ultimately, having very limited executive experience. She has not been an executive in really any sort of organization, whether it was political, whether it was in the private sector. Really, the only experience she has is being a bartender and being in Congress since 2018. Which ultimately, you are one of 435 when you're in Congress. You don't stand out. And it's not like she's been in the leadership with the Democrats. But it's like good, and I think one of her biggest weaknesses is going to be explaining to people in Ohio, explaining to people in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, people in Indiana, why is it that we can't frack in America? Why? Good luck telling all the oil workers that we're not going to frack in America, that you're going to eliminate their jobs overnight, that we're going to focus on renewable energy, which is, with all of the process of building the infrastructure out for renewable energy, there may be a net negative effect on the environment overall by transitioning to this. Because at the end of the day, for an industrialized first world country, America is the most green, the cleanest in the world. There's no doubt about it. And AOC is going to struggle in places like Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania and Michigan obviously are swing states, and those are the big ones. Good luck explaining to these people, these oil workers, these people who work with manufacturers, people who work in factories. Good luck explaining to them why you can't drill anymore. Good luck explaining to them why we need to ship more of our jobs overseas. And the idea of Medicare for all, great, yeah. The idea, who wouldn't love the idea of Medicare for all? Just in a bubble. Everybody gets health care. It's all decided for you. But then when you actually look at the reality of what Medicare for all means, excessive wait times, extreme tax hikes in order to pay for it, no agency over your health care, no autonomy over your health care. Your health care is decided for you by the government. Deductibles, co-pays, out-of-pockets that are out of your control. And extreme tax increases at every level to fund it. You incorporate all of it together. Americans do not want that. Americans do not want to raise taxes. They don't want that. Americans like to choose who their doctor is. Americans like to be able to shop their insurance policy around. Because the reality of it, when it's not just considered in a bubble or in a vacuum, the reality is detrimental for the economy. It'd be horrible for America. But what could the 2028 race look like? We've gone through right here, and we've determined kind of what we think are going to be the safe seats. Obviously, places like California, Washington State, places like Vermont, Massachusetts, Maryland, the District of Columbia, Maine's 1st Congressional District. These are all, even in Hawaii, very strong Democrat. They're going to be held by the Democrats, even if the margin is small, like we saw in 24, where Trump really did a good job blunting the margin in some of these places, like California, where Harris only won by 20 points. New York, where Harris only won by 12 points. New Jersey, where Harris only won by 5.9. Biden won by like 16 in 2020. Biden won New York by 23. He won California by 30. Look, it's just ridiculous. Illinois, 17. Illinois, 10. Look, it's like you're just seeing huge swings to the Republican Party. 16. 14. Like, huge swings to the Republican Party here. Huge swings. And the reality is we don't know where it's going to be. But this is kind of where we have the map. And then you look at the safe or the lean seats like Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, Illinois, Virginia, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Rhode Island. These are lean seats. You can expect Democrats to win it 5 to 10, if not more than 10 points. I'd probably even go on a stretch and say like 5 to 15 points. You can say California, Washington, Vermont, the deep blue, they're going to win by more than 15. I think you can make the argument that the safe blues will be 5 to 15, and then places like Minnesota, New Hampshire are going to be closer than 5 points. Places like Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District, which are going to be much, much closer than these really safe blue, safe Democrat seats that we're going to see. Now, on the Republican side, on the flip side, you see places like Idaho, Utah, Montana, West Virginia, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma. I could go on. But these are, no surprise, but these are the swing states moving forward. And if you want me to, these are the safe seats for the Republicans going into 28. Now, if you want to ask me, what are some seats that could be competitive that maybe weren't as competitive as we thought they would be in 24? Look at places like New Jersey. I think New Jersey has been trending to the right for a while now. This could be a seat that Republicans could pick up. That's 14 electoral votes there. Look at places like New Hampshire. A Republican hasn't won it since, 2000? Yeah, Bush won it in 2000. Kerry won it. Obama, Clinton, Biden, Harris. Yeah, 2020. 2000. That was the last time we saw New Hampshire. But if you're asking me, what is the one swing state that you could see jump in here? I think New Jersey. I think it could be in play. But ultimately, the swing states, in my mind, are going to stay mostly the same. Nevada, especially if AOC is at the top of the ticket, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. You could even say that Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District could be a toss-up. I think you can make that argument as well. Now, as far as voter turnout goes in 2028, AOC is going to need a high youth and minority turnout, while Vance is going to rely much more on the union vote, white working class base. I would say if you're going to look at Hispanics, really their core constituency and low propensity voters, which that's kind of the thing with AOC. They may be going after some of the same voters, because the youth are some of the lowest propensity voters you are going to find. And that is who she needs to turn out if she's going to win these elections. And Vance, of course, is going to message with America first, protecting our workers, protecting manufacturing, protecting certain domestic industries. America first. You may even say some more isolationist ideas, more isolationist than Trump. And I don't think Trump is isolationist. I think it's a peace through strength. But AOC is going to be much more of an equity lens, social justice, the future for all. It's going to be class warfare. A future for all, not just the wealthy. That's what you're going to see. She's going to lean much more into that class warfare to win. And it's going to be fiery. Like, I have no doubt about it. It is going to be some of the most populist portions of each sides of the party. And I don't even know if you can call AOC populist. Bernie used to be a populist. Not as much anymore. But yeah, I don't think you could call her a populist because she's so pro-illegal immigration. I don't think you can group her together with populists. But you were seeing two very different factions of the Republican and Democrat Party going head to head. Now, Vance, he is going to need to say high GOP turnout. It used to be lower turnout elections help the GOP. Now, higher overall turnout helps the GOP, especially if AOC fails to sway moderates. You know, places like Wisconsin, places like Michigan, places like Pennsylvania, they're going to require moderates, independents, to go for that candidate if they want to win the election. Because the reality is Vance will probably hold these states here. You can make that argument. Now it just comes down to these states here. And if Democrats win here, this could be tough. It's like you need to win the white working class. You need to win with moderates, with independents, like Trump did. You know, AOC, she takes this barely. This puts you 270. You're the president of the United States. Vance takes one of them. It's over. AOC would need to hold every single one of these. She would need to hold everything. All three of the blue wall states. She loses one, it's Vance's race. And we know that at the end of the day, there's going to be probably a youth surge. It's the next generation of voters, similar to what we saw in 2008. Vance probably will not see as much support with suburban voters, maybe specifically suburban women voters. But at the end of the day, it's really going to come down to the X factor, which are economic conditions, global events, third-party candidates that could tip the scale, all of that. What are the economic conditions in 3 years from now? Is Trump able to negotiate serious trade deals with China, with India, Vietnam, Mexico, Canada, all these different countries? Is he able to get American products into new markets by reducing the tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers? Is he able to get the American products into new markets? What does the general vibe of the economy look like in 2027? And what are the foreign affairs that are going on? What foreign policy conflicts are we still dealing with in 2027? That is going to be a big part of the election. That is the X factor here. Now, 2020, 2024, trends suggest it's going to be a tight race. The Electoral College does favor the GOP slightly, I would say. And AOC is going to need to flip at least one Rust Belt state if she wants to win. Because Vance, if he holds the Rust Belt state, my guess is he's going to win the election. My guess is he will win the election. You know what would be freaky? Vance wins all of that, wins the Rust Belt, sneaks by and barely wins Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. AOC wins all 3. It goes to Congress. Whew. That's a tough place to be. All he's got to do is pierce one of these. One of them. And I definitely see him piercing either Michigan or Pennsylvania in this race. No doubt about it. So in conclusion, Vance versus AOC in 2028 will be a battle of divisions. You know, populism versus progressivism. Both candidates bring some strengths, face a lot of challenges, and really united the country together. And outcomes are going to hinge on the turnout, the swing states, the state of the American economy in 2028. So let me know, what are your thoughts? Who do you think would win? Why do you think they would win? Let me know your thoughts on that. But my official prediction for 2028, this is my official prediction right here. A smaller electoral victory than we saw in 2024. Maybe even a smaller popular vote victory. But this is how I see the overall map going. I could even see a place like New Hampshire being a little closer. Places like New Jersey being a little closer. I could definitely see that happen. That is not far off. But my official prediction, Vance 302, AOC 236. Let me know your thoughts down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video from us again in the future. And once again, I appreciate you guys watching. We're 40 minutes into this. Thank you so much if you made it this far into the video. And have a wonderful rest of your night.